And that's been until this conversation, that's been one of the things that the Chancellor always talks about when we talk to a national audience, is that we have gone way out of our way to protect the school system's budget and under huge budget pressures, because we believe that in order to, get a real running start against this, real stagnancy that's in our school system, we need to give the Chancellor all the resources. As the budget moved its way through the legislature, there was this additional $20 million cut. As the Chancellor said, it happened on August 6th. Now, give her team and her a lot of credit. They didn't say, the sky is falling and there's this and that. What they did was they made sound management decisions that I think everybody in their place would have made that had as minimal impact on kids as humanly possible. And those absolutely have to be ones where quality is a factor.
Why has it become a focus of so much attention? You have the police union, the firemen's union, because some of the other unions coming out for rallies. I mean, is this one explanation could be they see this as a weakness, they see this as a chance to pile on because you're disrupting things so much. I mean, how do you explain all the...
There's lots of reasons, lots of explanations, you know what I mean? But it's a lot tougher to really go in and sit down with the Chancellor and figure out, all of the excellent things she's doing to put together a news piece for for the 6 o'clock news that explains, how she's advancing the test scores and the curriculum and hiring new people. It's hard to put that all in to the 20-second soundbite that you have to put together the 6 o'clock news. But it's easy to say, as has been done inaccurately several times, that the Chancellor's, firing 200 people and has no regards for people's lives and stuff like that. And it's unfortunate because it's really losing and missing a message of some great things happening. But for some reason or another, and I'll turn it over to the Chancellor, regular people understand that when a school system has been broken for 30 to 40 years, as ours has, that there has to be tough decisions. And that the only thing that matters at the end of the day is results, and people who have their kids in the school system, people who read about the test scores going up, who see the facilities repairs, they see progress where there hasn't been some for a long time.
The national attention, nation's capital, high visibility mayor, taking over the schools, a lot of coverage from us and other folks. Has this national attention helped you or hurt you or both? A, B, or C?
Well, I think it always helps to get the positive attention. I think, again, and one of the things I always close some of my speeches with is that for decades we have been a school system ranked near the bottom, where it seems as if the leadership of the city is perfectly comfortable with it. And now we are a city where it's still a long way to go. You could find probably a number of different categories where we're too far at the bottom, but what you see, by virtue of the same decisions that we all agree are controversial, that second sentence is no longer true, that you can tell that the leadership of the city does care, and that we are doing something about it, and we're moving in the right direction. And so I think having the national critical eye give support where they used to point fingers at us not doing the job is absolutely important.
How about for you, Chancellor? By the way, please come to the mics. We've got about 25 minutes, and I want questions from as many of you as like to ask questions.
Well, I think the national attention in a lot of ways has benefited the city and the school district. It has convinced a lot of funders to come in and fund the initiatives that we want to move, that are very aggressive. That funding I don't think would otherwise be available. And I do think that it helps other school districts. There was a mayor just this week who was saying that they got their union contract done, and they said, we think in part that it's been helpful that Michelle and Mayor Fenty have been sort of, battling this out in D.C., and we think that helped our teachers union negotiations. So I think that's a good thing too. Have there been some, backlash or some negatives that come with it, yeah, but I think that's any, part of any job.
What are the negatives to being in the spotlight?
Well,
You can't go to the store in your flip-flops.
I never thought when they took the picture of me with that broom that it would get played over and over and over ad nauseum. So I didn't actually regret taking the picture, but what I regret is that people just can't seem to let it go. And I do think that, in some ways people are saying, well, are they doing these things simply to get the national attention? Right. Is that what their end goal is? And I would say that, the mayor and I never talk about
Yeah, and this is the minority. I mean, again, I get a lot of positive feedback about the city, and 9 times out of 10, it's you keep doing what you're doing on the schools. In fact, the funny thing is, people come up to me literally and say, "You better keep supporting the chancellor." They're waving their finger at me, like I'm not the person who asked her to come here and to do all these things. So great support amongst regular people.
Okay, let's start here. Would you please identify yourself?
Nancy Brickhouse from the University of Delaware. Part of the title of the session has to do with turnaround schools, and this phrase turnaround schools has been used a lot in a lot of different contexts. And I'm wondering, in the case of Washington, D.C., is there a common understanding of what that actually means? Do we have metrics? What are your metrics for determining when you've turned a school around? What does that really mean in practice?
I think that's a great question. I was involved in a conversation with Secretary Duncan and Dr. Johnson and a few other superintendents from across the country, and we were talking exactly about that, because I think there are so many definitions right now. What's turnaround versus transformation versus closing failing schools? And I do think that it's necessary to come to a common definition of what does that mean, and then what does success look like afterwards, because I think there's such a focus on, okay, let's turn around failing schools, that we have less of an emphasis on what does success look like on the back end. And one of the things that we were talking about is there are lots of strategies that people are using right now to turn around schools. And what we've got to do is gather better data on each of those strategies to determine whether some are more effective than others. I think that is really critical to do, because it may turn out that the things that are less popular to take on in terms of a turnaround, like a total reconstitution or a closure of the school, if those things actually produce better results, but they're not taken on as frequently because they're not as popular, then I think the data could be really helpful in that, to say, it might cause you some political flack in the short term, but look at the results in the long term. And I think we haven't done as good a job of that across the nation of gathering that data.
If I might add to that, the turnaround specialist was a big fad a few years ago, and we followed one school in Richmond, Virginia. They sent a principal to business school for a couple of weeks, and if you go on our website, we did a 4-part series. It's sort of a lesson in superficial school reform. It's a glib, easy thing, and I probably supported by the Wallace Foundation, and I'll never get another grant in my life. But it's one of these things that people say, "Oh, that's the answer," as if there's a single answer, an easy answer. Whereas you guys are doing the hard work. A question over here, sir.
Yes, question for the Chancellor. I was intrigued when you were saying...
Your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Doug Miller from Merrow. And my question is for the Chancellor, and that is the question, you were talking about your interviewing skills. And the moderator was saying that practically 40 or 50% of the principals have gone on to other things, and that you look for certain, obviously, qualities or attributes during that, and you're able to assess that quickly. Would you be willing to share with the audience what it is that you're looking for, and what it is that these new principals bring to the Washington, D.C. schools?
This man should have been the moderator.
First, let me just say that my background in education for much of my career has been around recruitment and selection of educators. So I have probably conducted more interviews in my lifetime than anyone would ever want to. I mean, literally thousands and thousands, because that's the job I used to be in. I look for a few main things in the principal candidates. One, I look for people who are goal-oriented. I ask people, were you successful in your last job, and how do you know? And when people say, because people told me that I was successful and that sort of thing, you're done for. If you say, when I got in, we were at this level, when I left, we were at that level, and they can tell me in hard terms what they were able to accomplish, that's good. The second thing is that I'd say one of my biggest issues with our administrators in this district today is that they are, as a bunch, very, very conflict averse. They're just, they would rather give somebody a positive evaluation, even though it's not an accurate reflection of how they're doing, because they don't want to get yelled at, and they don't want to have to have a tough conversation with them, and they wouldn't necessarily want to make the tough decision of separating with them at the end of the day, and so they take the easy way out and they just say, okay, you're doing fine. And so one of the things that I look for in my leaders, knowing that these situations are difficult situations that we're sending in people into, is the wherewithal and the courage to make those hard decisions at the school level, and to be able to have tough conversations. And then I'd say third, we're looking for people who can be instructional leaders, who really know what good teaching and learning looks like. Because one of the biggest problems with our teaching force is that we're showing them the data, and they know they're not performing to the levels that they want to be, and they say, okay, so what should I do? And if the principal can't give them concrete feedback on here's what you need to do, here's what's not working as well, et cetera, then we lose all credibility and legitimacy. So it's got to be somebody who knows instruction well.
Yes, please.
So I'm Linda Treadway from the University of California at Berkeley, and I'll out myself as knowing Adrian since he was 3. So I didn't get the left coast politics there. I actually got it here, 35 years in these schools. As a teacher, I'm concerned about the history and where this places us in the history that is particular to the District of Columbia. We fought long and hard to get a school board, to get an elected mayor, and try to get democracy in the city. So this could be seen, and I applaud your efforts. God knows we need these schools to be better places for the children of the district. But I'm wondering where this places you in the sort of tradition of this unique city that's still a colony, in many ways.
Yeah, that's a great question, Linda. Great to see you again. I think maybe the best way to kind of measure what we were able to do in those first couple of months of the administration is the way to look at this. We didn't eliminate the school board. I said then, I don't know if I said it publicly, but I will now, that I don't think a school board I don't think it's relevant in the running of the schools. I don't. It may have been at one point, but the schools in 2009, at least in Washington, D.C., I think in other big cities, need to have the same elasticity and accountability as every other department that I'm in charge of. I mean, if I had to have 9 people run the police department or the school or the fire department,
And what part of your budget?
Chaos.
What part of your budget is schools?
Schools about $1.2 billion, but I mean both the police and fire are well into the hundreds of millions of dollars, and health is even more than the schools. But what we did right after that, we didn't get rid of the school board, and we didn't get rid of the school board because of what you said. We kept them as an advisory board for state purposes, I probably think that was too much, but I think it was a balance that we struck at the time. They don't have any role in the day-to-day running of the schools. I think that is best in one person, and the accountability, if you will, lies in the mayor, who, in our system of democracy, couldn't be any more accountable, having to go back to the voters every 4 years. And I think that what we did in the first couple of months of our administration is the true energy of where this city is. If we try it now, there's all kinds of people there's lots of special interest groups at play, but right after election is when the people's voice is the loudest, what they want to have happen with their city, because you're coming right out after the election, and I think we were able to get something done that the people had been waiting for a long time.
So it's your hope that this will continue after you're out of office? the mayor being in charge?
Oh, and not only that it will continue here, but in other really tough places to run school systems. There probably are some places where it's been running smoothly for a while, and it could probably go on with a board, or a board may work better.
Yeah.
Not in tough urban cities like D.C., Chicago, et cetera.
At most, you've got a total of 6 years as mayor. Is that long enough to set the ship right? I mean, if you get reelected, right? You got
Well,
six
it's
more
4 years at a time.
right.
Yeah.
But you
I don't know how you
know.
got to the 6.
Well, I was thinking you've done 2. You've done 2 and 3. Yeah, I didn't do well on the 4th grade math. You're reelected, but you've got 1 left or 2 left? I thought you had almost 2
So, no,
left.
okay, my election's in 11 months.
Yeah,
11
okay.
months, yeah.
Or let's say you're reelected, you've got 5. Is that long enough to set the ship right?
I'll defer to the Chancellor on kind of where we are and over. I will say a couple of things that I know as a non-expert. When we had the hearings on mayoral control, Joel Klein, and I think Wallace came down and testified. I said, don't look for anything major inside of 5 years. They said that's when Joel Klein really started to see, I think, between 8 and 10% increases in test scores. And our legislature, to their credit, actually put that in the law that they're not going to revisit mayoral accountability for 5 years, which I think was the right thing to do, and I credit them tremendously for it. Now, I will say that the gains that we've seen just in 2 years under Chancellor Rhee have at least exceeded that already, with, I think, 17% increase in test scores, the NAEP scores we talked about, graduation rates going up, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of good indications that we're heading in the right direction. One of the things the Chancellor and I talked about when we first met about the school system was how optimistic we were about D.C. because it's a very, compared with Chicago and New York at least, it's a much more manageable system. We had at the time about 50,000. We're just under 50,000 and stabilizing, as the Chancellor said. A lot of resources available to the both of us, a lot of talent to draw from, both from the county and region, but also nationally. So that I think is to our benefit.
Can you do it in Mayor Fenty's 2 terms, assuming he's...
Well, we often talked early on about the fact that it would probably take 2 terms to really, not that it would take that long to begin to see changes. You should begin to see changes very quickly, but to be able to look back and say, we have radically changed the life chances and the life outcomes of kids in this city because of the school reforms, that it would take that long. It wouldn't take 2 terms.
I hear your name has come up in some other cities when they're looking for superintendents. Are you going to stay?
I have no interest in being the superintendent or chancellor in any other place but here.
This is a one-shot deal?
This is a one-shot deal. And I will say this, I mean, when I left the New Teacher Project, which I was the CEO of before I came here, I often said, I don't think I could ever leave this job because where else can I go? I can't have a boss. I'm not good at sort of having a boss. And now that I've actually had this one, I always say I could never have a boss other than this one. He has been just absolutely unwavering in his support of the schools, and nothing that we have accomplished in the last 2 years would have been possible without him. And he, I think, very much downplays this, but just the example of the budget, I just feel like this story is important. When we were starting the development of the fiscal year 10 budget, the mayor very early announced that he was going to hold the schools harmless. And people went nuts. Other agency heads, other people said, well, the schools make up a huge percent of the budget. You're the largest city employer. You have to shoulder your fair share of the burden because we were facing an $800 million deficit as a city. And the mayor said, no, they don't. We are in the situation that we are in this country, the financial situation in this city and in this country because of the irresponsibility of adults. But we're not going to make up for this on the backs of kids. And he said, he said, when I say that education is my #1 priority, I don't say that just because it sounds nice. What it means to have a priority is that if you have to cut everything a little bit deeper so that you can protect your priority, that's what it means. And, so I don't think there's a politician anywhere else across the country who was willing to take that hard of a stand in this kind of an economic downturn. And so I just don't think that people can underestimate. You can talk about mayoral control, and I do think that it's important, but it's not just mayoral control. You have to have the right mayor in place in order to see these things.
I told her she had to. Go ahead, please, with a question. Identify yourself, if you would.
Sure. Hi, my name is Paula Dominguez, and I work with the Rhode Island General Assembly. There's been discussion here around sustainability and embedding in the structure of school districts, states, and schools the kind of change that's going to make a difference in the long term. I was wondering if you could speak more concretely about how you move what is a product of your close relationship in this mayoral appointed scenario, how you move that from something that's between the two of you and a product of something that's between the two of you to something that is embedded within the structure of the schools. And also, what do you think are the most vulnerable aspects of your reform strategy that are still out there, so that if this were somehow to reverse or to become different, what might not happen in the schools as a result of the fact that it's still embedded in your interrelationship?
So I think one of the important things to note here is that there is no way to guarantee that the kinds of things we're doing aren't going to be reversed tomorrow. People always say, what are we going to do if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? I mean, there are no guarantees around that. All we can do is try to institutionalize some of the things that we're doing. And I'll give you two examples of how we're trying to do that. First, when I first got to the city and saw the state of the central office, I was very disheartened because people were telling me that I couldn't remove central office employees, I couldn't build my own team. And the mayor said, well, that's silly. If we don't like the rules of the game, let's change the rules. And so he introduced legislation to the city council that would allow us to turn all central office employees into at-will employees.
So that's not at risk unless the council...
That's right. So by making that, by pushing that legislation and now putting that into law here in D.C., I think what that does is, if I do get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's going to allow D.C. to attract a different kind of superintendent, someone who knows, okay, this is a place where I can go and build my own team and hold people accountable. The second way I think we're trying to do that is through this teachers union contract. I think that, you know, what a lot of superintendents will tell you is it's hard to change something that's currently in the contract, right? That's what we all struggle with, and that's why we're working so hard to get the contract in place that we think is the right contract, because we believe that once we have it, not that it's going to be impossible to change, but the likelihood that you change it would be a lot less. And I think if we can couple things like that with the results that we're seeing, and people know that the results that we're getting are a product of these changes that were made, then it's going to be harder to roll those back in the future.
So I've asked you this quite a few times. How close are you to getting a contract?
I refuse to answer that question anymore.
Before, earlier times, she said, well, we're getting closer. And, Mayor, are you concerned there's no contract?
No, I actually would be concerned if the chancellor had compromised some of the key principles on her side of this. I follow her closely, and I know, as I tell people, I know how we could get a contract ratified. We could get a contract ratified tomorrow, but it would probably be either watered down or not materially different from what we have in place. And this is it. The chancellor and her principals being able to hire whom they think can do the job, or release those who can't do the job, set hours that are different, and give them more. That is how we go from, I think, a very good pace of reform to a much faster pace of reform than even we've been doing.
Do you feel that you have the union over a barrel? I mean, they're losing members, as many of you may know. They, because of charter schools, teachers are going there. They don't have to be in the union. Do you ever feel like you have the union over a barrel?
No, if I had them over a barrel, we'd have contract by now. I do think that the union is in a tough spot right now, because I think they do realize very clearly that that we have to reform the way that we're doing things, and if we don't, then we are going to continue to lose enrollment. And you could look up 10 years from now, and there is no DC public schools because it's just charter schools. So I do think they feel that pressure, but at the same time, with that pressure, they also know that there's a lot of pushback from people in the rank and file who are very hesitant about moving forward into a system that has a lot more accountability.
Union President George Parker says that he accepts pay for performance. At least he says it to us, so I assume he says it to you as well. But let's take a question here, and then we'll go there. We're going to run out of time, so it better be a quick question.
Okay, quick question. Pat Buzz, Tadeusz, Legislative Budget Office, Austin, Texas. Chancellor, when you interview a potential principal candidate or as in your supervision of principals, do you ask questions about nurses, counselors, and librarians, parent specialists? And if so, what answers are you looking for?
No, I don't ask questions about that because I feel like that's our job as the central office to set the baseline of what we think the staffing should look like in a school. And so what we've done that through is what we call the comprehensive staffing model. When we inherited the district 2 years ago, what we found was a place where some schools had all of the staff that you could possibly imagine, and other schools didn't have an art, music, PE teacher, those basic things. And so what we wanted to do was bring equity to all schools by saying, this isn't a matter of whether you like art or you don't like art. Every single child in this system should have a base level of curriculum and services in their school.
And that does include art, music, and PE?
Absolutely. Art, music. Because of the school closures that we did the first year, we were able the following year to put an art, music, PE teacher, a librarian, a full-time nurse, and either a guidance counselor or a social worker at every single school, and as far as
Okay, I think this is going to be our last question. Yes, sir. Identify yourself, please.
I'm John Pierce. I'm a school board member, now deemed to be superficial, but no, I enjoy my role as a school board member. I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana. We talked a lot about 3 R's, over which it sounds like you've got good control over, but what about the 3 P's? What about parents, partners from the community, and preschool that might feed children into your schools? How important is that in the context of what you're trying to accomplish, and how important will it be to have those supports going forward?
Very important. We've increased the number of preschool seats in the city by a few hundred every year that we've been here. So we're really reaching the critical point at which we think we'll have enough seats for any 3 or 4-year-old in the city who wants one through us and our community-based partners. And I think that parents and partnerships overall absolutely are of critical importance. And on the partnerships front, I will tell you that the community, both the business community, the philanthropic community, and the nonprofit community in this city have embraced these reform efforts, have been so incredibly helpful to us in so many ways. They have been patient with us. They have been, willing to have incredibly meaningful conversations to sometimes, shift their direction to meet what our priorities are. And I think that, again, as the mayor said before, people were so tired year in and year out of seeing the same sort of failed results for our kids that everybody really is focused on providing support for the district in a wholly different way. And so I can't say enough about those partners.
Is either one of you concerned about the drain of students into charter schools? I know it seems to have stopped this year, but you lost an awful lot of kids to charters. Does that concern you, Mayor?
Well, I couldn't say any better than the Chancellor really just did. I mean, first of all, we both recognize that there are some excellent charter schools, and that they do some excellent work. In fact, again, the model we're pushing towards is a model wherein the principal has the autonomy that you find in a charter school or a private school. Someone told me when I was running, Mayor, you need to create. You don't need to worry about an excellent school system. You need to create a system of excellent schools, and I think that's what the Chancellor is doing. But there's a tension that I think is healthy because this city has to have a successful public school system. But you can't expect parents to just wait forever, and they're certainly not going to wait, another year if it's impacting their kid. They're going to go to an alternative, which gives us, the right amount of leverage to say to the teachers union or to somebody else who is a special interest, it's in your interest that we get this right as well.
You all saw the NAEP scores for the District of Columbia. Chris mentioned they went up, and those scores were for public schools and charter schools. They weren't broken out. I asked someone at NAEP this morning to drill down into the data and see who did better. The kids in their schools or the kids in charter schools. And it looks like the kids in your schools did better. I know they did better in 4th grade math than the kids in the charter schools. And it looks like they may have done better in 8th grade math as well. That is, the public school kids outperformed the charter school kids. That's a preliminary analysis, but I don't know if that... and the last point is that if you'd like to see the earlier adventures of the mayor and the chancellor, they're on our website, learningmatters.tv. There are 10 chapters, all which I watched yesterday. And I thought, wow, these two are really something else.
That's back when I had hair.
And you already know there's something else. Would you please give it up for these two remarkable people? Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, this was great fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.